Hi there! Welcome to Design Tales, where we break down the best design books out there so you don't have to slog through them yourself. Today's episode is about one of the big ones in design, the OG of design thinking, The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. This book is legendary, like the Beyoncé of design books. So whether you're tuning in while commuting, lifting those weights, or just folding the never-ending pile of laundry, we're going to make this 10 minutes worth your while. You've definitely interacted with bad design at some point, right? Like, ever pulled a door and it didn't open and you're standing there like an idiot? Yeah, Don Norman has something to say about that, and it's not your fault. So here's what we're going to cover today. What's the book all about? The juicy main concepts that'll make you think differently about everything you touch. Key takeaways. Strengths and weaknesses, because no book is perfect. Notable quotes, get ready to jot these down. And finally, how you can apply these ideas in real life. Alright, get comfy, and let's dive into the design of everyday things. So, let's start with the basics. What is the design of everyday things? Well, this book is all about why some products are intuitive to use and others make you feel like you've forgotten how your hands work. Don Norman is a cognitive scientist and a design expert, so he's got a unique take on why some designs just don't click with us. He kicks off with a bold claim: it's not your fault when something is hard to use. It's the designer's fault. So, the next time you struggle to turn on the shower at a hotel or figure out where to swipe your card at the checkout, remember, you're not the problem. It's the design. Norman dives deep into the psychology of how people interact with everyday objects, whether it's doors, light switches, or your phone. He explains that good design is about making things intuitive and natural to use. If you've ever had a moment of, how do I use this? This book will explain why that happens and how designers can fix it. Now, let's get into the good stuff, the main concepts that make this book a classic. The first one is of affordances and signifiers, alright? I know those sound like big fancy words, but stick with me. Affordances are what something can do, what it affords you. So, like, a chair affords sitting. A door affords opening. Simple, right? But then we have signifiers, which are like the signals that tell you how to use something. For example, if there's a handle on a door, it's a signifier that you're supposed to pull it. No handle? Probably a push door. Now, when these two things don't match up, it's a disaster. Have you ever tried to pull a door that actually pushes and you just stand there, yanking like a fool? That's bad design, because the signifier wasn't clear. Second, we have the concept of feedback. You ever press an elevator button and nothing happens, so you press it again. And again. And again? That's because there was no feedback. Norman says good design gives you feedback right away. Think of your phone's haptic feedback when you tap something and it gives you that little buzz to let you know, hey, you did the thing. That's good design. It lets you know the system is working and responding. Next is about mapping. Okay, this one's fun. Mapping is all about how controls relate to the actions they produce. For example, have you ever seen those stove burners with the controls in a straight line, and you have to guess which knob controls which burner? Yeah, nightmare fuel. That's bad mapping. Good mapping is when the layout of controls makes sense intuitively, like when the knobs are arranged the same way as the burners. When mapping is clear, you don't have to think twice about how to interact with the thing. Finally comes the blame game. Human error versus design error. Norman talks a lot about how people often blame themselves when things go wrong, like when you can't figure out how to turn on a new gadget. But Norman says most of the time, it's the design that's flawed, not you. So if you've ever messed up because the microwave buttons were too confusing, don't beat yourself up. Blame the designer. Okay, time to hit you with the key takeaways. These are the things that will stick with you long after you finish this podcast. Firstly, an obvious but important one is that design should be human-centered. Good design is all about focusing on how real people like us actually think and behave. Designers shouldn't assume we're all tech wizards who can figure things out instantly. Design should work for the person using it, not against them. Next, usability is more important than aesthetics. Sure, we all love pretty gadgets, but if it's beautiful and useless, what's the point? A good-looking product is nice, but if it's hard to use, it's failed. Norman's all about functionality first. That doesn't mean you have to sacrifice style, but usability should always be the priority. Next is that you need to iterate. Iterate, iterate. Design is never done. You've got to test, refine, and test again. Designers should constantly improve based on feedback from real users. If something's confusing, fix it. Don't just assume people will figure it out eventually. Another takeaway is to design for error. This is a big one. Norman says that we should expect humans to make mistakes and design products to minimize the consequences of those mistakes. For example, if deleting something permanently is an option, make sure there's an "Are you sure?" pop-up. Basically, expect people to mess up and help them recover when they do. And finally is the importance of feedback. Norman emphasizes that users need clear feedback to understand if they're doing something right or wrong. Imagine trying to drive a car with no dashboard. You'd be guessing if you were going 20 miles per hour or if your engine was on fire. Alright, let's be real. No book is perfect. Let's break down what the design of everyday things does well and where it falls a bit short. First off, this book is timeless. Even though it was first published in the 80s, the principles Norman talks about still apply today. Bad design is bad design, no matter what decade we're in. And it's practical. Norman doesn't just talk theory. He gives real-life examples, like confusing doors or cluttered remote controls, so it's easy to connect the dots to your own experiences. When it comes to the weaknesses, well, it can get a little dense at times. Norman is a cognitive scientist, so he does go deep into psychology and theory. If you're not into that, some parts might feel a bit slow. But hey, you can always skim those sections and dive back in when the practical stuff comes back. Also, some of the examples are a little dated. The book has been revised over the years, but a few of the references, like answering machines, might make you chuckle. But honestly, the principles still hold up, even if the tech has changed. Okay, let's hit you with some quotes you can impress people with at your next dinner party. Or, just keep in your back pocket for fun. One of my favorites. The design of everyday things is in great danger of becoming the design of superfluous, complicated things. Oof. Burn to all those over-designed apps out there. Another one I like is that good design is actually a lot harder to notice than poor design, in part because good designs fit our needs so well that the design is invisible. And this one is a classic. When you have trouble with things, whether it's figuring out whether to push or pull a door, or the arbitrary vagaries of a shower control, it's not your fault. Don't blame yourself. Blame the designer. You can't go wrong with that. Okay, so how do we use this in the real world? The first point would be to pay attention to design around you, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Once you start noticing affordances, signifiers, and feedback, you'll see how some designs just work and others don't. You'll never look at a door or a coffee machine the same way again. Next, if you're in a design field or creating products, test your stuff on real people. And by real people, I mean people who aren't designers. Watch where they struggle and fix those pain points. Because, as Norman says, design should be for people, not for designers. And last but not the least, give yourself a break. When you fumble with a product, remember, it's probably not you, it's the design. So next time you feel like you're failing at using a new gadget, cut yourself some slack and blame the designer. It's all their fault, really. Alright, final thoughts on the design of everyday things? This book is a classic for a reason. It's a game changer in how we think about the objects we interact with every day. Whether you're a designer or just someone who's tired of struggling with bad products, Norman's insights will have you thinking, hey, it's not me, it's the design. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend checking it out. It's the kind of book that changes the way you see the world and your doors, stoves, and remote controls. So that's it for today. Thanks for hanging out with me on Design Tales. If you enjoyed this episode, hit that follow button, share it with a friend, and let's keep the design convo going. And meanwhile, comment which book you want me to talk about in my next video.
Catch you next time.